Okay, it is 5 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Mark, would you please take a roll? Make sure we have enough people. Looks like we do.
Sure, I think we do. So is Peter Connor here? I don't think I see him.
I'm here.
Yeah,
Oh, there you
saw
are.
Pete.
Okay, Nate Day, I see. Ted Dockery, Ken Markhart,
Yep.
Katie Nelson.
Yep.
Dan Ramsey is there. Dale Rhodes is there. I don't see Carrie.
Okay.
I don't see. Oh, Jim Schutz is there.
Yep.
And Ella Donner. So Carrie and Ella are not here tonight. So we have 8 present.
Okay, very good. We'll call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the minutes from December 12th. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those? And if they all look good, can I get a motion for the minutes to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept them.
Thanks, Jim. Can I have a second to Jim's motion, please?
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes
Peter,
are approved.
Were you the second, Peter?
I was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our first agenda item is the 5-year street improvement plan projects anticipated for 2024. So what I'd like to do, Mark, is I just want to bring everybody up to speed. I want to make sure that everybody's familiar with the fact that every year the city has a 5-year street improvement plan. Mark, would you put that on the screen for me, please? And while we do a 5-year plan and it goes through Public Works and then eventually it makes it Plan Commission, it makes its way to the council, it is a plan. So it is subject to change, but it does get, on occasion, it does get switched around and changed, updated, but it's basically the plan going forward. So as we talked about in our last meeting, this is the opportunity for the Bike and Ped Committee to be able to kind of take a look at the upcoming projects and be able to have some input in those projects before it goes on to the Public Works, which then recommends it to the plan and to the council. So to kind of keep us on track, I just want to concentrate on the projects in Mark's memo, which are the projects for 2024. And then we'll leave any other subject matter alone for another time. Okay. So Mark, would you just give us an overview of, let's go with these. I think the best way maybe would be go with each project one by one, and we can kind of discuss it and see what we have for 2024 and see what we have for suggestions or what we'd like to pass on as our recommendations to the Public Works Committee.
Sure. So on the map here that you see, the streets in green, Elmwood and Westfield and Foxridge, along with a few adjoining cul-de-sacs. Franklin is located just north of University Avenue, and then over by Harbor Athletic, we have a couple cul-de-sacs there as well. Those are the streets that are mentioned in the memo, and I'll take them in order here of the memo. So Elmwood, we of course talked at the meeting in December, and that will be the last 2 blocks of that will be being planned for work in 2024. So I didn't think there was really anything to talk about there. I will briefly mention that there has been some discussion since that meeting about, given the fact that there's no bike lanes being recommended, about possibly revisiting bike routes, east-west bike route through the city, south of University Avenue, possibly shifting that to Hubbard, but we will have that as a future agenda item. Franklin Avenue is got special mention in our comprehensive plan, and so I wrote a little more about that in the memo. The comp plan referred to this as a possible candidate for a shared street, so essentially a complete street, really focusing on the recognition that we don't have north of University Avenue a good east-west street designated for heavier bicycle use and for pedestrian traffic. Obviously, all of our streets are to be complete streets moving forward. And so that's why the comp plan identified this as a possible, some ways that we could, as we look at redesign of the street or reconstruction or resurfacing, I should say, that this would be an opportunity to install some amenities for pedestrian and bicycle safety. So that's what the focus of the rest of this section is. I did note that we haven't really had a significant problem with crashes, especially involving pedestrians and bicyclists. Well, obviously, one is too many. We don't ever want to see anyone get in a crash. Pedestrians and bicyclists usually lose those crashes, so lose out on those. So we, of course, have the high school nearby on one side, Sauk Trail on the other. We now have this as the route of our Good Neighbor Festival Parade. University Avenue is not suitable for bicycling at this parallel stretch of University west of Branch Street. So, and then the bus service that exists there today is going to be discontinued in June. So those are the factors I mentioned in the memo. So I would recommend, Dan, that the committee discuss the traffic calming strategies, which I gave you a link in the memo to this website, which came up on my other screen. Here we go. Do you see it?
Yep, thank you.
So, these are just, there's any number of websites that I could have pointed to, but this seemed like a really good one because it showed, had pictures with the names of the traffic calming strategies. Lane narrowing, adjusting the corners, the design of the corners so that it's harder for vehicles to make turns as quickly. And it limits the time that pedestrians are in the crosswalk. Obviously, how the street is designed along the sides of the street. We have housing today. We're not going to see any significant design changes with the housing we have with the setbacks in our zoning ordinance. So that this one's not as relevant. But the concept is, of course, the context in which you travel along a street can affect the speeds and decisions that people who use the street with the decisions that they make. Gateway treatments. So again, this is at corners, trying to emphasize to everybody who uses the street that care should be taken when traveling on the street to really encourage slower travel. Pinch points. This is similar to what the experiment on Elmwood earlier or last year with at the mid-block crosswalk, where there was some barricades set out to try and reduce the width of the street. Chicanes and lane shifts. The picture should make that pretty clear what that is. Again, the aim is to lower vehicle speeds. Medians and refuge islands, we've talked about that quite a bit. Mini roundabouts or traffic circles, we have had experience and discussion of that. Speed humps we discussed at the last meeting as well. We have some of those on High Point Road today and Valley Ridge Road. There's probably a couple other streets that have them. Speed cushions is a new term that you may not be as familiar with. They're similar to speed humps. They have wheel cut openings to allow large vehicles like buses to pass unaffected while reducing car speeds. Our first responders do have concern with speed humps. I've gotten feedback on the Elmwood Avenue. They're concerned about, they have to respond to Middleton Village, for example, and so speed humps will affect their response time. So maybe this is another way to look at it. Speed tables. It's very similar to a speed hump, but with a flat top. Paint color, pavement color is a technique that's used in a lot of communities to visually give cues that it's an area where one should travel more carefully. Simply the concept of two-way streets. We already have a two-way street here, so that's not a new concept. The reason why this is here is because on a one-way street, like in Madison, you have 2 or 3 lanes on a one-way street and people tend to barrel along in a pack of cars. Two-way street helps to break up that pattern. So most of our streets in Middleton are two-way, of course. We don't have any traffic signals on the street. Diverters. This is an intersection you can't go straight through then at this point, but if you're a motorist, but a bicyclist and pedestrians, of course, could. Here's the shared street idea. And then there's a link to that. So this is the shared street concept. It's just, you know, it's I don't know if you've gotten through this, but residential shared streets, just again, some design treatments, a lot of them that we've talked about already, just to try and break up the design. So that's, rather than me talking more, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the different concepts in case you didn't have a chance to look at this before the meeting, and turn it over to the committee day.
All right, thank you, Mark. So I guess I'm going to open this discussion up to the committee then as to, and Mark will go back to any of these if you want to draw particular attention to them. But looking at Franklin, and maybe Mark, you can pull it up so we can see a picture.
Yeah, and I just realized I put pictures in for the other ones, but not for Franklin, which I'm surprised I didn't do that.
Well, no worries. We have the technology. You can pull it up.
Yeah. I probably didn't know, there wasn't any one part of Franklin that I really knew what to give a picture for. So
It might be helpful just to kind of give a picture of Franklin so we can all kind of refresh our memory of.
I'll just pick something at random here.
Yep. It goes quite a ways. So, but this gives us, this picture here gives us a pretty good flavor of how it is for pretty much its entire length.
I'll go to the high school here. Assuming.
Hey Mark, this is Carrie Scheffner. I'm just joining. Sorry to
Hey,
be
Carrie,
late.
thanks. Thanks for letting me know you're here.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi.
So here's the high school course, which looks a bit different now. But this field is still here today. In fact, it's larger. But this is, of course, a major, we have two four-way we have two four-way stops intersections on each side of the high school.
Yeah. Then as it continues, it's just two-way stops with the rest of them.
Correct.
How far does permitted traffic, or excuse me, how far does permitted parking go on Franklin? Do you know?
For the high school?
Mm-hmm.
That is a good question. Actually, we can probably figure out that answer by, I would suspect, certainly to Park Lawn. There we go. Let's see if if there's any signs that tell us. My computer is, this is not responding very well, so I hope it doesn't crash. There we go. It's a very lethargic response though. So here's a sign that says permit by parking only. So the block between Park Lawn and Park Street is the same, but certainly by the time you get to Park Street.
By the time you cross over Park Street?
Yeah, I'm sure it's gone. Jim, you know, you live in that area, don't you?
Yeah, it is. It does end, I think, at Park Street. You still get people from the high school parking on beyond that on both North and Franklin.
Yeah.
Sure, they just don't need to have a permit to do it.
Right.
At that point, you're making a big commitment to walk.
Yep.
Most people are dissuaded from that. Then they cross the street and go to Kathy's neighborhood, right, Kathy?
Yeah, park over there too.
On south of University.
Okay, I'm going to open this up for the committee then. This is the committee's opportunity to looking at some of those strategies, whether they be street narrowing or, you know, some of the other things that we talked about with Elmwood from a pedestrian bike safety standpoint. What is the committee's thoughts about what we should recommend to Public Works when they redo the street, bearing in mind that, so Mark, is this street kind of considered then for something, it's in our complete streets comp plan, is this considered then a bicyclist commuter street?
Well, yeah, the reason what I did in the bike plan is called out the two streets on either side of University Avenue, because University Avenue, of course, is not going to have bike lanes added to it. It's not a good bicycle route, and won't be in any stretch of the imagination because of narrow right of way. So the city's bicycle plan, and I have a link to that in the memo too, shows the area as the parallel streets, Franklin and Elmwood, as being the streets we want to guide or encourage bicyclists to use.
And in your memo, you mentioned that this Franklin has not been, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly, has not been a place with numerous complaints or accidents.
No.
Or hardly any.
Correct. That's correct. We have not, from what I saw in the data, the crash data from the last 10 years, there have been 3 crashes on Franklin reported in the state database. None of them involved pedestrians or bicyclists. And the crashes, I think 2 of them were at intersections. Well, actually, I should add that they were, I'm sorry, these were crashes that were possible injury crashes or more. There could have been other crashes, and probably were some other crashes that were property damage only. But the database, the way it wouldn't let me query all crashes. It was too large of a data set, and I didn't have a subscription to the database. So so it's possible and quite probable that there were some other crashes that were, bumper to bumper, some rear end property damage without injuries. So I want to clarify that. So the most significant crashes that had potential injuries, there were only 3 of those, and they seemed to be 1 possible injury and 1 minor injury suspected at Park Lawn and Park Street. The other one was west of Wood Road.
But none of those accidents involved a bicyclist or a pedestrian?
That's correct. I did check all accidents involving pedestrians and bicyclists, and none of them had that. It's a flag that's in the database, and none of them had that flag. Now, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right, thanks. So in light of the information that we have, and in the light of the fact that the street's going to be redone, are there any, I'm going to open it up to the committee. Do you have any thoughts about what potentially you might want to see on Franklin? I don't know that, and I'll start with on-street parking. I don't know that we're going to, that's necessarily going to go away, simply because particularly by the high school, because there's so many students that park there, and teachers and people having business at the school. So I'm not sure that that's going to be one of our strategies necessarily, but is there any other strategies that members of the committee have a feeling or a thought about?
So I understand your position, but I'm still going to say, let's get rid of on-street parking. I understand it's people don't want to do it, but I honestly do not think we are going to be able to make this a bicycle friendly street unless we radically do something about that. There's nothing to dissuade someone like me, who is not a confident cyclist, from riding on the street like getting doored. And believe me, even on a street like Franklin, where in the area when I'm using it, I'm nowhere near the high school. So the area I'm using it doesn't see, from the times I've ridden on it, doesn't seem to see much closer to Branch, doesn't seem to see high parking utilization anyway. But when you get passed by someone in a car, it's inevitably, as you are about to need to move into the road to go around a parked car. I understand that this is a difficult thing, but unless we consider something like this, we are never going to see bike ridership beyond adults who are dedicated bike commuters. That is my feeling about this. So what things we can do within that space, I don't know, but I'm just going to keep asserting that.
Thanks, Ted. I appreciate that. Any other comments?
Yeah, I was gonna bring up, I think that Franklin, if we're going to, would be a good starting place to look at the complete streets. You do have going all the way from Parmenter to Branch. And in addition, there's some additional parking on Franklin near Branch because of Sauk Trail, but that's usually a minimal amount. I like the idea of the street narrowing, but the one thing I wonder about, is that going to be practical now that that is the parade route? Would that have any impact?
And
Would the street become too narrow for the
sure, I
parade?
understand I understand what you're saying. What I'm wondering is, Mark, this street's going to be, is it a total rebuild or just a resurfacing?
I believe the plan doesn't show that, but looking at the condition, I can't imagine it'd be a total rebuild. The only thing that would trigger that, and you would maybe know differently, Dan, is if they need to rebuild utilities beneath the street.
Yeah, I don't think-
typically, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. So
Yeah.
It's a mill and overlay then.
I can't imagine that it's anything but that, and especially if you look at the condition of Elmwood. I mean, this image here, actually, this is from July of 2007. This is a really old one. Wow. Earlier, I elsewhere on this quarter, I saw it was 2016. Where let me go to a more. Let's go over here.
My point is to Jim's point, that if this project is going to be a mill and overlay, not a total street reconstruction, the chances of narrowing the street, I think, are going to be somewhat minimal.
Right.
Because it's just going to add an astronomical cost to move curb and gutter and driveway aprons. And, yeah. So the idea of narrowing the street is more an idea of when we get to the point where, the street actually has to be tore up and dug up.
Okay, so then we were talking more here than in terms of what we can do for traffic calming, making it more accessible for bicyclists and for pedestrians crossing either Franklin or the intersecting streets.
Yes.
Okay.
And looking at the condition of the curb, even from 2016, the park by the high school, it was they took pictures 6 or 7 years ago, I guess it is now. But I just don't see any need to reconstruct. Yeah, there's just it's not going to happen.
No. Carrie?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we should consider kind of mirroring some of the strategies that we're doing on Elmwood. And that way, like Mark was saying, if we're wanting people to kind of use either side of university, that maybe it would make sense to do some of those same strategies. Like doing some circles, like the circles that we're talking about at some of the intersections. And Mark, remind me, are we doing any kind of pavement markers for just to indicate that bicycles belong on the street on Elmwood?
The committee decided at the last meeting not to do any pavement markings for bicycles. The focus is on speed humps. Also, there's been some encouragement to look to shift the focus to Hubbard Avenue for bicycling, for a bike route. There was going to be wayfinding signage on Elmwood.
That's right.
But not on street signage and on street pavement markings.
And I don't know what intersections would make sense necessarily. I'd have to look at that, but I was just going to throw that out there. if we should try to mirror some of the same strategies.
And to Carrie's point, I think that makes a great deal of sense to try to get a little bit of continuity on the streets where we want bicyclists to go. If the signage and the markage is kind of universal, I think it lends itself to just being safer because everybody understands. Katie?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What you and Carrie are saying, consistent signage for bicyclists, and that will train the drivers as well. I'm wondering if this street isn't quote bad enough for total reconstruction. Do we just say we'll put it in the hopper for 5 years from now and we find another one to start with? Or am I missing, is that too easy?
Well,
I'm looking at Tad and I'm thinking, I'm sorry, I don't want to just blow it off.
well, the thought was, as these streets come up for whether they're rebuilding or mill and overlay, and to a certain extent with mill and overlay, you're somewhat limited in, because you're not necessarily going to change the size or change the width. But if we just say that, this really isn't bad, and really this street is not a problem street. This is not something that we have to get super concerned about. But if we want to do kind of create a consistency in our markings, now would be the time to do it for the street, because we're actually doing something with the street. If we, because we can't, the idea is to put these things in while we're doing the street, because it gives us a kind of a goal that we work on streets as they come up, and then it gets done. If we just say we don't really have any recommendations at all, and maybe that's where we end after this discussion. But if we have any recommendations at all, now would be the time to do them, because we're not going to get another shot at it because we mill and overlay this, and I can't remember, what did Sean say that lasts, 30 years, 35 years? We're not going to touch this road again for a number of years.
And marking and signage is easy. So it's the least we can do, right?
Right, it's easy, but it's something that should be incorporated with doing the road, so that when the road reopens and everybody realizes, oh, this is where we're at on this.
Dan, if I may quickly clarify something you said, I don't know how long mill and overlay lasts, if it's 30 years or not, but in terms of touching the street, they do like a chip seal. There is a topical treatment done within that time period until it needs to be resurfaced. So that's like every 5 years.
That still puts us in the same situation, and they're not going to have to chip seal it for a number of years.
I understand, but the point is, once you do a mill and overlay, or I'm sorry, a chip seal, you then apply new pavement markings if there are some. That's the only reason I'm pointing out that distinction.
Okay.
So
I guess my point is, and thank you for clarifying that, but I guess my only point is, if there's some markings that we want, now would be the time to do it, when the street is getting done now, instead of waiting until the chip sealing, because even that's going to be I don't know, that's a 10-year schedule, I think, maybe 15-year. We'd have to ask Sean. I don't remember what those are exactly. So I guess what I'm saying, and my point is there some kind of markings that we want done on Franklin now? Do we have any recommendations as a committee? And I'm throwing it out there to get your ideas. Do we have any recommendations as a committee now? Because this would be the time to do it. Plus, this is kind of where we want to, if the street's marked and has got some kind of bike signage and markings, then people would tend to use it more than other streets. So we move people back on there to use it as a bike trail. Ted?
So if we don't want to, I feel like we could narrow the street without, I understand that the curb and gutter aspect is very expensive, but I feel like we could nonetheless narrow the street if we used vertical elements like poles. We could put them in the street and we don't have to reset the curb and gutter. We can use paint in other places to emphasize the poles. I don't know how much effort this would involve, but we could, assuming it didn't utterly destroy the road, because that would be a bad thing, we could potentially put in some bioswales at various points without completely eliminating or having to redesign the gutters. I'm sort of just spitballing here.
Sure.
I just suspect there's probably, and I wouldn't be surprised if other cities were doing this. I wouldn't be surprised. Davis, California would be one that I'm sure if we Google Earthing Davis would be kind of a mess, but like, I'm sure there are other cities that have done stuff like this, that have done mill and overlay and haven't narrowed the curbs, but have nonetheless narrowed the streets by various means. We could do that, and we could do that to help define the on-street parking also. And by doing that to help define the on-street parking, we would put the cyclists in the middle of the road. And that has some issues, but for me, as an uncomfortable, I would actually be a bit more comfortable with that than I am with the usual stick 3 feet to the curb and have to swing into traffic mode. I would feel much more visible to motorists. So it's a thought.
I actually am looking at Davis, California here. I just was pulling up a couple things. So while you're talking, I'll just skim through.
Dan, I'm very sorry. I have to go to another meeting right now, CDA.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
I'm sorry. Is there any
No
vote
worries.
that I should come back for or anything
That
that you're?
we'll probably be on that by the time you get back. So that's all right.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
Yep.
One thing I would recommend in the way of signage is, I think, a stop sign on Park Street at Franklin would be good for a couple reasons. One, people coming from University Avenue, if they had to wait at the light while they were on Park Street to cross University, as soon as they get across University, they start to accelerate. And there are about 3 houses along Park Street there before they reach the corner of Park and Franklin. The other thing, as far as going up Park Street, is they do not encounter any stop signs even when they reach Maywood. And so you have people who will take, rather than if they want to get over to Allen Boulevard, rather than going down University, they may come up Park Street, take a right on Maywood, and then go down to Allen Boulevard that way.
So visually depicting what Jim is saying, here's the Park University intersection. A driver that gets a green light here can go all the way north and then turn left or right without stopping at Maywood. And I don't think, is there a stop sign at Maywood? I can't remember.
There's a stop sign.
Mayflower.
Yeah, there's like a
East-west stop sign at Maywood and Park.
And well, you're right, but at Maywood and Mayflower, I can't remember if I don't think Maywood Avenue. I don't remember if
Maywood doesn't.
Okay, so then Jim's point is that you can drive up here, turn right without stopping and get all the way to Brass Street without having to ever stop. I think that's the point, Jim, you're trying to make. So
Correct.
you're advocating a stop sign on each side of Franklin.
Right.
So a four-way stop at Franklin.
Four-way stop at Franklin. Now, there is 7 months of a year. And I keep forgetting what those standalone signs in the middle of the street are for pedestrians. There is one there at Franklin and Park Street. I would say it's somewhat effective. I have seen, like I've been waiting on the sidewalk to cross the street, and somebody will see that sign and they will stop. But I just think that a stop sign would be much more effective there, particularly for bicyclists going down Franklin.
And I agree, Dan. I think that there should at least be some paving markers on Franklin to indicate that bikes belong there. So that, I don't know, Mark, what, like signage and markings, like whatever I think we usually do, I guess, to indicate. But I would like to see that at least.
And Mark, what did we decide on Elmwood for markings?
There was a discussion last time about that sharrows are maybe not as effective as once thought, and the sharrows are the in-street bicycle symbols. So at this time, the committee did not recommend any on-street pavement markings, but they did endorse signs along, bike route signs. That was where it was left.
Do we have any markers? I think there's one on Park Street, right? Like, is there any on what do you call them, sharrows?
Oh, the sharrows?
Yeah.
We put them before on Terrace Avenue. I can't think of another place right now in the city where we ever marked those. I can show you what they look like on Terrace because, well, assuming that this was.
Yeah, I've seen them before. I just didn't know where.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's fine. Like if that's not what we do, if we just do like the signage, again, just to kind of be consistent, I think then just doing signage would be fine. Then
Here's an example of it. Right next to a parked car, Ted.
Yeah.
Of course.
Just as it turned out.
A visual aid, if you will.
Well, and actually in Tad's point is an excellent one, because those of us who do use a bike, you quickly learn as a bicyclist that you want to leave 3 feet between yourself and a car. Otherwise, and where this is striped, where this is shown, I mean, this guy did not, the driver here did not, they're parked close, legally close to the curb, and this is within range, probably awfully close of that door. So I would have, I guess, if I were laying these, I would have put them maybe a foot over, even more.
Yeah, that's my thought by looking at this is why can't the sharrows be, because the idea is you're supposed to share the road. Why can't the signage be a little bit farther out into the road, especially on a road like Hubbard that for the most part, other than the school, is a residential road.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, Dan. I just like I like the idea to indicate that to vehicle traffic, that cars belong there too. Like somehow
Right.
that.
So
Bikes belong there too.
Sorry. So one of the issues in many places has been that motorists tend to misinterpret the sharrows as the bike lane. And they will roll down their windows and yell, "Hey, you're supposed to be over there," and that's not what that indicates. So there's a pretty big education issue there. I don't know if we know if they're effective when they're big and in the middle of the road. Application of them by cities has been very inconsistent. They're kind of like yield lines. Yield lines are great. I love yield lines. From talking to a bunch of recently driver's ed people, no one knows what a yield line is. So,
Let me show you an example of in Madison of how signage is used. Sorry, how signage is used to convey the bicycle route. I'm looking at Kendall Avenue here. Which one is it? I'm going to guess it's this one. Oops, I don't think I landed on the right one. Oh, I did. Okay, so here's Kendall. And actually, oh, interestingly, let me go back once quickly. Sorry. So they have the Shero symbols here. Very narrow street. If I recall correctly, it's so narrow that it's hard for two cars to pass each other comfortably. It certainly isn't comfortable. I think it's possible to do, but it's not comfortable. And then at the intersections, they have, oh, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. They have this. They have signposts that convey that this is a bike boulevard. And so I was thinking along those lines, doing something like that. It's also found on the isthmus with the Capital City Trail where it travels on the street for a while. They have those as well. So that's a use of a sign that that's a way to use a sign that could be effective here. I'm showing the one on the isthmus here for comparison. So here we have, let's see here, the bike path is, here we go. So here you can see the Capital City path runs, it's Capital City Trail, and then it intersects with the street here because they needed frontage for these residences that are here. And I believe that the computer is really dragging. It's probably going to crash. The browser probably is going to crash. Anyway, similar, here we go, similar sign. There we go. Wow. I got too many things going today, apparently. There we go. There it was. So here, East Wilson Bike Boulevard. And I think there's some on-site, bicycle boulevard signs. So I think something like this would be effective on Franklin.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Mark. Like those three things, like the sign you're showing there, the bike boulevard and the other sign, and then the Sharrows. I think the combination is nice.
Could the Sharrows be put in the middle of the road with the arrows going in both directions?
I think that's not, I mean, any symbol we use, our city engineer will want it to be a standard, something
Okay, that's what I meant. Maybe I didn't know if it was a standard.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be, well, I can't think of an example of that. Maybe Tad or others know, but there's definitely a lot of innovative techniques. Oh, by the way, here's another sign, Capital City Trail. So it shows motorists that when they're crossing the street or when they're approaching that intersection, that this is a major street corridor. But that's, I think the reason, what makes this different from Kendall is it's actually this, they were trying to continue the trail that runs up the isthmus, and this is a 3 or 4 block long segment where the trail doesn't exist. So I don't know if this is common anywhere else in Madison.
But the difference between the signs is one's a blue sign that looks like a street sign telling you where that
Right.
path is for the bikes. This is a cautionary sign. I mean, everybody knows the diamond with in the yellow is a cautionary sign. So they're somewhat different.
Yeah.
This is a wayfinding sign, where the other is a sign that says, hey, listen, there's going to be bicyclists and pedestrians here.
And I seem to recall, I haven't checked with anyone officially on this, but I seem to recall having heard that Madison is not putting in more of these bike boulevard signs, but I don't know that for a fact. I think I heard that, but I don't know what the rationale is for that. So I can check into that if you'd like.
So
I personally find them effective. I like them.
And I don't have anything against them at all. And they sure, like you say, they're wayfinding, but what would it hurt to have the Sharrows moved out a little bit farther than from what they were in the picture on Terrace, and then having cautionary diamond signs like the one that you just showed us along Franklin at key spots.
Right. Cautionary diamond signs. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You mean these?
Yeah, that.
I mean, this, I'm not sure I know what you
I
mean.
mean,
by
that's a universal caution sign that says any driver who sees that, you're drawn to the fact that there's a bicyclist and a pedestrian. It's kind of like a school zone sign. So it tells you what to expect there. And why wouldn't we want to have something like that in strategic places where we want bicyclists to go?
I think, well, I'm not trying to answer every question. Go ahead.
So I guess that's just my thought to go along with what Carrie said about signage and markings.
So to encourage Sharrow symbols to be set farther from the curb, you like the boulevard, the bike boulevard sign. The yellow, I'm more reluctant and skeptical to look at that favorably, because I think our public works director would say, why this street and not any others? Why would you have a yellow sign here and not anywhere else?
Well, the argument to that would be, and that could be a discussion to have, Sean, but the argument to that would be, if Franklin is a route that we want to put people on, if we want to encourage people to use that for this specific purpose, then why wouldn't you have the signage? I mean, we're not specifically trying to encourage people to ride their bike along other streets necessarily, but if this is a specific street that we'd like to kind of direct bicyclist commuter traffic through, then I don't understand where there would be an issue with having secondary signage. I
would personally not be in favor of the signage as a warning sign. That doesn't make me feel like I want to ride down there. That I understand that the point is to communicate to drivers that they need to be more alert, but that kind of makes it seem like, watch out, drivers, there's those crazy cyclists here. Maybe I'm just taking it too personally. A better solution might be just something. It would say, I don't know if we have an American sign. I'm thinking of, there's a sign in the Netherlands that says bike street, cars are guests. And I don't think we're going quite to the cars are guests. We're not going quite that far. We're not going in that far of a direction, but I think that kind of bike street signage might be better, because it promotes cyclists being there, and it informs drivers that there will be cyclists there without making it seem like the cyclists are a threat.
I have something.
Oh, go ahead.
So if you drive anywhere in the United States, driving a truck routes are marked with yellow signposts. Is there something nationally that are identifying bike routes instead of us trying to reinvent it? I don't know if there's something that, is a standard.
Mark, would you happen to know the answer to that?
I do not know. I mean, there are some standards across the world I've seen, like parking being a blue sign, but I don't, we have definitely in the West, North America specifically, our own set of standards that pertain to the US. A lot of them you see in Canada as well, but even Canada has their own set of standards. So I don't know how else to answer that question.
Okay, thanks.
Do you see the, what the sign that, I have another browser window up. Is that on your screen?
Yes,
Okay.
the Dutch sign.
Yeah.
Yep, it is. Okay, or do we have any, is there anyone else who has a thought or a comment? I'd like to hear from anybody.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I just,
Thank
as
you.
an elderly driver, you know, there's a lot of different stuff out there. You got to keep concentrating on the road. So I would say keep it simple and keep it consistent throughout the city of Middleton. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Anyone else?
Sorry, Mark, the rural design guide does, for the bicycle boulevard, does seem to have this North American signs.
Okay. I'm looking here. You said there were some signs in here. This one?
Yeah, it's green and it says bike route.
Yeah, I assumed we were going to do bike route. I mean, bike route signs are common. I would prefer a green sign that says bike route as opposed to the yellow. For some reason, I can't enlarge that, but I know what you mean.
So how about this? If the committee is going to make a recommendation for this street, that we would be interested in street markings with sharrows, more bicycle, more signage for to indicate that this is a bike path. Could we come up with a motion for Public Works? The project isn't going to be for a year, and during that period of time, we can do one of our meetings. We can start to look at having different ideas of what some of the signage could possibly be, so that we could, along with Public Works staff, Sean, have some input as to some consistent signing throughout the city. I mean, I don't think we have to decide tonight on what kind of signage it's necessarily going to be, because it sounds as though we have to kind of go and investigate, do a little bit of investigation of, is there a standard? What would be the best sign? It would be nice to be able to see kind of a menu of those and be able to pick what we think that we would like to be consistent throughout the city. Does that make sense to anyone?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I like that too. I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you. No quorum over at CDA.
Short-lived.
I'll make that motion, Dan.
All right.
What you
Thank
said.
Carrie. Appreciate
So-
that.
Why don't you restate it for Katie's benefit and for mine, please?
Oh, I heard it.
Oh, thanks a lot. You didn't bail me out there.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mark. Repeat it for us all, please.
Well, I had started a list of what I was hearing earlier. I'll just put it on here so you can see it. And it's not consensus anymore. It sounds like it's a motion. So
It is.
encourage sharrow symbols to be set farther from the curb. Did someone say you liked the bike boulevard signs or not?
Yeah, I think
think-
we're more generally saying like, let's add bike route signage, maybe bike boulevard signs as well, to indicate that this is a bike route, but that maybe we would have further discussion about exact signage. Was that right, Dan? Is that
Yeah, I just thought that if we're gonna start to play around with different signage, it would be good as we go along. To Ken's point, to have some consistency in our signage. So if we could have a menu of different signages and be able to pick some that we thought would be effective and that Public Works, Sean could get on board with, that would be a good way to go.
Yeah, I like the idea of being the consistency.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed?
Now
Motion.
who, so I guess I didn't even get, so Kate, so who made the motion?
Carrie made the motion and Katie seconded it.
Is this reflect the motion? Because so is this the focus of the motion right here?
And encourage shallow symbols to be set further from the heart, both things.
Okay.
On Franklin, this is what we were talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, this isn't the end of our, or is it the end of our recommendations for what should be done on Franklin? Are we going to talk about crosswalks or anything like that at a future meeting?
This is the motion for how to do the bikes. Do you have do you have an idea of what you would like to do with crosswalks or
Stops, the four-way stop.
the four-way stop that you suggested at Franklin and Park?
Right, at Franklin or Park and Park. The other, I know we had talked in some areas about having painted crosswalks, like the green ones. I think, can you bring up the Park and Franklin intersection again? Wanted to see what those crosswalks look like.
I think they're just normal crosswalks.
Yeah, and I'm wondering with that is, do we want them to be more like the ones that are on Park Lawn and North with the stripes through the crosswalks?
Like the ladder symbol or whatever that's called.
Yeah, the ladder symbol.
Park Lawn and North. Oh, here they are. A very observant walker you are.
Oh, I am, believe me.
Oh, there you go, sure. As they go to the little median.
Those have a plus side because they're very noticeable. When they are wet, they are very slippery. So, but I like the idea of somehow either having the ladder crosswalk, which the city already uses, or using diagonal striping at the busier intersections.
Okay. Would you like to make that an amendment to the motion? Or a friendly amendment to the motion, Jim?
Or
to add a four-way stop at Franklin and Park and to make the crosswalks ladder patterned?
Sure.
And Carrie, would you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes.
And Katie, would you accept that?
I would, thank you.
Thank you.
are the ladder pattern crosswalks then at all the intersections along Franklin?
I don't think so. It's just that that intersection seems to be so much busier because of Park Street than the other intersections.
Okay. And actually, we're looking now, well, that was the Park and North. or
North.
Park Lawn and North.
Mark, can I ask you a quick question about that? Does it make sense to go with the ladder pattern all over since we're trying to make people more aware of pedestrians? Does it
Well,
pay to be
that's why I asked the question.
consistent With
Yeah,
all of them from now on?
Yeah,
That's
and
why
that's
I'm
why-
asking for clarification. Go ahead, Dan, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark. I was just going to reiterate that that's why Mark was asking that.
Yeah.
That question is as to whether or not the committee felt that we just needed that at Park and Franklin, or if we were looking at trying to make that a new standard, in which case we'd want to do it at all the intersection.
And Sean will say then what governs why they're placed here and not at every intersection in the city.
Mhm.
And I'm just telling you what he'll say.
Well, and that's why we have different committees and why different committees recommend to the council, and then the council decides if there is a conflict.
I mean, isn't that kind of what we're gonna try to do, is gradually have all of them be consistent? So,
Yep.
you know, that to answer Sean's question would be yes. The answer that they're not already all over is they will be.
Yeah, it's an immaterial question because it's part of the plan.
Mhm. I do recognize, I'm so sorry, Carrie. The,
No, go
the slippery issue, I wonder if there's something we need to deal with and ask a question.
I think what makes them slippery, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the one who pointed it out, but just the presence of the paint, you're walking, as opposed to just having, you know, you see the what I would call the, well, just the two lines, you obviously aren't walking on those lines.
Mhm.
But when you have the ladder effect, then you encounter the paint. So that's what makes it slippery, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I'm just wondering if
Slippery.
there's something to be done in the paint, if you can put some kind of anything in it. But I interrupted Carrie, so let's let her.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just wondering, is it okay that this is all in one motion in terms of like, you'll go to Public Works? I don't want them to necessarily, like, because they're separate issues. So I'm just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want them to lump them all and say like, nope, we can't do any of it. Or do you think it will be like, here's some options to consider for each thing?
Yeah,
So maybe it doesn't matter if it's in one motion.
I don't think that these are our recommendations, and
Okay.
I don't think that it'll matter that it's all in one motion, Carrie. You know, you are on Public Works, so you know what the spirit of what Bike and Ped wanted to do. So,
Okay.
and frankly, probably at Public Works, they'll pick and choose and say, well, we think we can do this, but we don't think we can do that. And that's kind of how it'll go.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm kind of thinking that four-way stop at Franklin and Park, I think there's some kind of, because it's
Sure.
closer to the stoplight, like I'm not sure if that will be doable or
Right.
not. But
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be discussion for that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to complicate it. I think it's probably okay this way.
Okay.
Okay, is there any more discussion?
Any reaction then to this? Is this okay? The motions to recommend to the Public Works Committee or staff? Which do you prefer? I mean, staff was going to be, well, I'll do the committee because it's a policy issue.
Yeah, it's a policy issue.
Yeah, the following approach to help Franklin Avenue become more of a complete street. Is that putting words in your mouth? Is that okay, Carrie?
yeah, that's okay. Yep.
Okay. Encourage the share of symbols, ensuring that they are set farther from the curb than they are along Terrace Avenue. Research signage options and provide a menu. Oh, this is the same thing. Do you want the menu of options as part of this, or how about just what do you want me to say? Research signage options to use
Yeah, that's fine.
consistently
Just keep it
around
more.
the city.
Yep.
And then some examples here. Four-way stop at Franklin Park to help reduce speeds of traffic along Park Street, vehicles along Park Street, let's say. Type. And then the use of ladder pattern crosswalks at all intersections and encourage their use throughout the city.
Does
Yep,
that capture it?
Yep.
Katie, you good with that?
I am, thank you.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Okay, Mark, then that takes care of Franklin. So let's go to, our next one is Westfield.
Yep. So Westfield has, you'll recall, is in Fox Ridge, and the city has previously experimented with some traffic calming features here that were the result of neighborhood initiative about 15 years ago. This is at the intersection of Westfield and Knight Circle. It does sound like there have been some complaints over the years from people about this. I'm sure it's not very as easy for snow removal, but those are the, it's a pros and cons here. They do have a little ladder style crosswalk. And then here's an intersection, the intersection with Hampstead. It's a court on one side and a road on the other, I think. Actually, maybe they're both cul-de-sacs. But anyway, so there's a mid-block pedestrian refuge here. As I said, these are about 15 years ago. Feedback has been mixed, according to Sean. Are there any other techniques that you would consider helpful to calm vehicle traffic and enhance the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists? Neither the comp plan nor the bicycle network plan for the city identified a specific need or called out the need for bicycle facilities along Westfield. Doesn't mean we can't consider any, but it was, I did consult those plans, and the state database does not indicate any documented crashes over the past 10 years along Westfield. And I, again, should have said injury crashes. So that's what I have for Westfield, and I can take us there with the browser.
I guess my thought on Westfield, and like others to weigh in, but I guess my thought on Westfield is if we've had these traffic calming features in for 15 years, and you understand that anything you do is going to be somewhat a mixed bag as far as people's opinions, I do not see any reason in taking them out, and I would redo the street exactly the way it is.
I
It's
agree.
consistent.
Yeah, I agree, Dan. Sorry, go ahead. You weren't finished.
No, go ahead, Carrie. Did you have something else to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to agree with this. And this was actually brought to Public Works a couple of years ago, I think. And we kind of came to the same conclusion that there's always going to, like you said, there's going to maybe be some complaints. Some people like what we had heard was like some people didn't like it, some people did, because it was near the park. I think that's why that was placed. So I would agree, just keep it both on both areas, in both roads.
I will call out that Westfield Road. So the places where the cul-de-sac, where the features are, let me have it go north here. So north is up. So here's Westfield. This is a cul-de-sac, Knight Circle. That's where one of these features is. The other one then is at Hampstead Court, which are cul-de-sacs on both sides. But then Westfield or Westchester Drive, which is a three-way intersection like Knight's Court, doesn't have any features. And then also Voss Parkway, actually, I forgot to check if Voss Parkway has something. November 2021, Voss Parkway has nothing, even though there's a curb here. A curve, excuse me, not curb. So in other words, there's 2 of the 4 intersections have no traffic calming or pedestrian refuges, and the 2 that ironically are cul-de-sacs do. I just now realized that. So just bringing it to your attention.
But the data has showed that there have been no accidents.
There's been no injury accidents, right?
Okay.
Is the one there on Knight Circle to Westfield, I think there's access, there's a path to the park. And I think that's why that placement's there.
Yep. And that's, it looks, yeah, whoops, sorry. Did not mean to scroll down. Yes, this white line is a path. So you're correct. That's access to the park.
There's a lot of, I live near this area. There's a lot of walkers and bikers that kind of like take that path.
So one of the questions for this would be the same as we just got done discussing with Franklin. Then do we want to recommend, again, for consistency, do we want to recommend the laddered crosswalks? Is that something the committee is interested in?
This is Katie. I would say yes. Let's work on getting that consistency going.
Okay. Other than the recommendation for laddered crosswalks, is there any other recommendations for this this road, other than making sure that the traffic calming features that are there remain there? If not, then the consensus of the committee is to recommend that for Westfield, that the intersections get the laddered crosswalk treatment, painting treatment.
And to retain the traffic calming features that are currently in place.
And yes. Let's see, we made a motion for the other one. Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect for the Westfield? If not, I'll make that motion. Does anyone want to second it?
I'll
I'll
second.
second. Oh, go ahead.
I'll
Jim
second.
seconded. Thanks, Jim. Okay, if there's no more discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next, we look at Lake Street and Dewey Court next, Mark.
Dewey or Doey?
Dewey.
Yeah, so I think I only did the photo. Yeah, I didn't do one of Dewey Court. We can cruise over there quickly too. Well, since I have Lake Street up in the meantime. So, yeah, so what you see in orange is where the Captain Bill's site used to be, and that's going to become a either 4 or 5 story, I think it's a 4-story apartment building. Can't remember how tall it's going to be, but anyway, it's going to be an apartment building. And as part of that, the sidewalk will be going in. It would make sense, of course, to have a sidewalk continue over to Allen Boulevard. That's shown in red. One of the questions is, do we also want to, as part of that street project, have a sidewalk added on the south side of the road? There would be some impacts to vegetation. I don't know if that street's being reconstructed or not, or if it's just a resurface. I don't know. Dan, maybe you.
I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't remember. Yeah. Carrie, do you remember?
I don't recall either.
It looks like the curbs are, this is from July of 2019. They look like they're in good shape. The gutter pans are in good shape. Again, unless there's, again, utilities that have to be rebuilt, which that's pretty rare to have to do that. So
yeah, I don't think so.
Here's an example of just somebody happened to be walking in the street. So, there's obviously no sidewalk accommodations right now. So that's not acceptable.
I think it's pretty important to have sidewalk on both sides of the street because there's the shopping centers and all the stores on the other side. Harbor Athletic Club is there. There's a lot of people walking around just getting into Harbor. So I think that it'd be really important to have them on the sidewalk and not in the street.
Also, there is discussion in planning to do something with the lake access there, which would and I don't remember exactly what the plan is, but Parks Committee is talking about doing a project down there, which would increase the number of people that will be using that area for recreational use. So
we could put a boat symbol in the street, a Sharrow symbol.
Sure. No problem.
Well, it's just ironic. It's ironic that it happened to capture 2 people walking to the lake. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, with paddle boards, it's funny.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to that we recommend to the Public Works Committee that sidewalks be installed in the areas highlighted on that map that you showed, Mark.
Okay.
So I guess the orange is already gonna have sidewalk.
Yeah,
That's
I
coming
don't
in with the
know.
apartment complex.
Yeah, I don't know about extending it. Well, if you go all the way to the lake there, that's, I think there's a property issue there. Yeah, that's their buffer. So I don't know how you feel about sidewalk on both sides. Obviously, there's an impact here. One option would be to narrow the street to, which of course requires replacing the curb so that the sidewalk isn't affecting the vegetation as much. But I think it is important to have it on one side of the lake, one side of the street to go to the lake. No question about that. So,
Mark, is this going to be consistent with the plan that sidewalks will now be 5 feet wide?
yeah, the sidewalks are, when they're built, it's my understanding they're built to be 5 feet wide. That's my understanding,
Okay,
unless there's some sort of constraint. So I guess, Carrie, what I was asking is, are you intending to have it be on both sides, which is fine with me. I just am pointing out there's, gonna be some.
Yeah, I like the idea of having it on both sides, but I like the also of narrowing this. But is that a boat launch where maybe they need to have it wider?
Yeah, it is a boat launch. So
Yeah.
narrowing that street is gonna, and it's the only Middleton boat launch that we have that's actually Middleton owned.
City.
Marshall
Yeah.
Park belongs to Madison, and Mendota Park is Dane County. So I think it's, somewhat
Yeah.
important that we keep that as a boat launch.
Maybe then that is a hard one. You don't have on the map. You didn't have sidewalks going all the way down to the lake, right, Mark?
I
I
didn't
wonder if
understand.
maybe that's just like something to consider the options.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the property ownership is here, but I know that's a constraint, and I know that the residents in the condos are very vocal. So it's just, what's this? Yeah, it looks like the property line might be right. I mean, there's distortion with this aerial photography, but anyway, you can make that recommendation and see where it goes. If that, I mean, that is consistent with our complete streets policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I'll
see
keep it.
nothing. Yeah, I see nothing wrong with making the recommendation, if that's the way the committee feels. Is there a second to?
May I make a suggestion here?
Sure,
On
please
the
do.
intersection of Lake Street and Allen Boulevard, can we enhance that crosswalk? I mean, that's really a rat race down there on Allen Boulevard. Can we have
Yeah.
like, the flashing lights? Or is there some there? No?
There's no beacon there, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
Is that what you were looking for, Ken? One of those pedestrian beacons?
yeah, I mean, there's high-speed traffic going through there. That I know I've used that street and I see pedestrians, I slow down, but cars pass me, but
Yeah,
Sure.
that intersection's a mess right there. Mhm.
Every part of that intersection's a mess.
yeah.
And the one up the road at Century is a little worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
well,
there is gonna
let's-
be more traffic because of that apartment building, I
Yeah.
mean,
So RFB here on the north side. In fact, it looks like they don't even have a crosswalk on the south side.
No, they're directing everybody to the north side. But as part of the Lake Street project, we certainly could recommend that they put in an RFB from Lake Street to across Allen Boulevard. Is that your suggestion, Ken?
yes, it is.
Would you like to add that to the motion then?
I would.
Carrie, would you accept that?
I like the idea. I just don't know if that's going to be an effective place. Like I'm a little concerned that pedestrian, just because I don't know. I want something there, but I just don't know if that will help right there just because of the divided highway or road. It's such a long intersection, that I
Sure.
just don't know if that's a feasible place for that.
I think we put some in at, if I'm not mistaken, I don't take Allen Boulevard every day, so I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think, didn't we put some in at Maywood? Or Mendota Avenue, I mean, excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some there?
I'll give
Yeah.
you a little,
Oh, okay.
I'll give you a little closer example. We have one, yeah, we have one there, but we also have one on Century Avenue at Century and
Ridge.
Valley
Oh,
Ridge
yeah, yeah.
Road.
Okay,
That
yeah.
that
I'll
go from
take
the
that as an
apartments over to
example.
the, so it's kind of the same thing, and it's actually kind of nice to have that refuge in the middle.
Yeah,
So we might
okay,
have
yeah,
to,
that sounds good. I'll accept that amendment.
okay.
Has that been
So-
working out pretty well, Dan, from your observation?
Yeah, it's, people use it and, you know, sometimes you still get the people that go too quickly through there, but yeah, it's been huge for people to be able to get across the street there. As you can imagine, a number of people from the apartments I see walk over to the Dollar General pushing strollers and whatnot, so
And traffic
I like
stopping,
it.
I mean, the traffic in both lanes is responding to that pretty well?
yes.
Okay, good. I'm very happy
So-
to hear that.
Dan, do you push the button and get to the island and then you push another button to get to the other side, to get the other second half?
Nope, it's timed so that you push the button and everybody stops from both lanes.
And it's long enough of a stop?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, good.
Yeah, there's no, actually, there's a stop, there is a button in the middle, so if you need it,
Yeah, that's
it
good.
looks like you can, although it's not clear to me if that's, you know what, that's probably because it's a button that illuminates the whole thing. That like Dan was saying, but if you need to reactivate it, it looks like you can do that in the middle.
I
Or
think
not
that would be,
I'm
I think that would
not
be
sure they
important.
have that on Century Avenue, though. I think we just have the two.
I think that would be an important one at Lake and Allen to have it reactivated if necessary.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep, there is one, Dan.
Oh, does it have a button on there too?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm mistaken. So then we would want that same treatment then on Allen Boulevard. There at
Yep,
Allen and
so we
Lake.
can maybe say similar to the ones installed at Century and then on Allen Boulevard further. What is that, south?
Dan, you're so fast when you cross these intersections, you don't even need to stop in the middle. We know that about you, so that's why
Yeah, there you go. I'm usually running someplace.
I wonder if we would also want them to consider the leading, you know, what we talked about a couple meetings ago, the pedestrian leading. Like, because I
Oh,
think
the-
there's going to be some, there's going to be lights installed, I thought, at Lake Street, right?
I don't think traffic signals being installed there, but I could be wrong. I think that's awfully close to, is that a part of the plan, Dan?
As from what I understand, as we sit now, no.
Okay. So then, yeah, never mind then. I thought first there was going to be.
Okay, so we have the sidewalk on both sides of Lake Street. And RFB on the north side of the Allen Lake intersection, like the ones at Valley Ridge and Mendota. Was there something else that? I think that was it, what you guys had said. And I had Carrie is making the motion, but I didn't hear a second.
Jim, did you second? I thought Jim seconded it.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the
Here's
last
Dewey.
one is Dewey Court.
Yeah, Dewey Court has a sidewalk on both sides for most of the way. Yeah, there's one here. So it basically serves all the housing. It doesn't go quite all the way around, which is not necessarily the end of the world. It ends here. So the only part that doesn't have a sidewalk is part of this, you know, the cul-de-sac. So I mean, I see no reason why that couldn't finish. Let me just see how far. Yeah. For some reason, this one little, you know, 75 feet or whatever that is, doesn't have a sidewalk. So that probably could be done. just so that if anyone wants to loop around. But other than that, I'm not recommending anything else unless you wanted to have, oh, actually, that's true at this. So the idea of crossing, we have had complaints here about it's hard to cross Century Avenue. So, you know, that could be another opportunity for an RFB.
Anybody have any thoughts on that? An RFP would be a little bit. Well, you know what, we could, if the committee would be interested, we could certainly recommend one there, and then the subject would get debated, because that has been a continual sore spot for area residents.
Yeah, and I would point out, as Dan well knows, this is an access to the Conservancy. We now have the North Mendota Trail on the north side, so getting people to that trail for biking is important, but then also that's a Conservancy access at the end of Marina Drive. So I think a RFB, based on the experience that you're saying, Dan, it's doing okay up at Valley Ridge. I think it makes sense to have one here.
There's not a pedestrian refuge though, right?
That's a very good point, Carrie. That's an excellent point. So why wasn't there one? Why isn't that an issue down here? Oh, I see. There's a little bit more room here.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just such a, yeah, that's too bad that there's not a pedestrian refuge there.
I think it's,
And that we install one.
I think it would be a good idea to get it on the record that the committee endorses having one there. And since Dewey Court is going to be touched, now would be a good time to get that recommendation out.
So how about adding the RFB at Dewey Marina Drive and investigate establishing a pedestrian refuge on Century?
Well,
Right.
I'm trying to remember if that's still the condition of, I haven't walked in that area in a couple months, but you can kind of tell from that map, pedestrians are not meant to cross there at all.
Right.
The crossings are
You are
intended
right.
to go straight across. And you're just, I have used that median as a pedestrian refuge, and it's not fun. But the angles don't go there. That is car land, and you should not be there.
Oh, yeah.
Is how it was designed, and so that's very different from further east where there's actually that intersection, and I think that's part of the issue.
And I agree with you, Tad, and I'm not saying that we would get an RFB there because of the exact issue that you are speaking of, is there's no refuge there. But at some point we'll redo Century, and I think it's a good idea if we get on paper that at some point we recommend that there's something there.
Yeah. I guess I'm just checking. Do we need to recommend that there's crosswalks there first before we add the RFB? Are they part and parcel?
I would. Well, they would be in conjunction with. I would never
Okay.
we would never put a crosswalk there without one.
Okay.
I will say that I've thought about this intersection in the past. I was trying to look at a way to get a path underneath this bridge when this bridge gets rebuilt, and coming in along the side of this property owner here. In fact, I don't want to go into too much detail. It's not going to be, that's not a very viable option. It certainly is not a short-term project, but there's some potential redevelopment that's going to occur at Middleton Shores in the future. And I don't mean to call it redevelopment and get ahead of their plans, but they are asking us about options for their property. Let's just put it that way. And So there might be an opportunity to get a little more right of way and do some widening here to get the pedestrian refuge. So I like Dan said, this is a great time to say this is an important need. The comp plan does identify, the comprehensive plan does identify Century as a problem in terms of being a barrier, that there's such a big gap between crosswalks. You have the one at Allen Boulevard, and then the next one's up at the top of the hill, and that distance is terribly long to not have a crosswalk. So
Yep.
I think this is a great time. I'll put that in the notes too, that the I'll mention the comp plan identifies this as a critical need. Establishing a crosswalk is a critical need. Okay.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion to that effect? If not, I will.
I can try if you like, Dan.
Go ahead.
This is at Dewey. No, wait, this is
at Dewey. Yep.
Dewey and Century. The committee recommends. Oh, I forgot already. We want the crosswalk and RFB and pedestrian refuge across.
Right.
And was there anything else that we were talking about down?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we want sidewalk to continue around the whole cul-de-sac.
Yeah, there's a little gap here.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
Is there a second to Katie's motion?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Dale?
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are on to our next agenda item, which is Metro Transit bus service changes going into effect of June 2023. Mark?
Yep. So I added to the packet yesterday. Hopefully you noticed it. This is a formality, putting in motion the bus stops, and ordinance amendment that would put in motion the new bus stops. There's 8 of them, and then deleting, unfortunately, a huge long list of bus stops that currently is on the books. And so this would just be a recommendation to the License and Ordinance Committee and Council.
And this is consistent with the agreement that, and the change in bus service that we have with Madison
Yes.
Metro. So this is kind of a housekeeping.
Yeah.
Ordinance,
This
if you will.
implements the bus service that goes into effect in June.
Thank you. All right, can I get a motion to recommend this to LNO and council?
I will move to recommend this to LNO and council.
We have a motion by Ted. Do we have a second?
This is Carrie, I'll second.
Carrie seconds. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries.
And I will add, as part of this item, that I'm having very active discussions as recently as today with Metro Transit. Since this is on the agenda, we can talk about it. We are having, we will be establishing 4 shelters. We've talked about that at this committee previously. We have 4 to relocate from that won't be served in the future. And you've previously talked about where those shelters would be, but I do want to bring to your attention this concern. Here's eastbound University Avenue. This would be the eastbound downtown stop. And we have, there's apparently a state law, which makes sense, not to have a bus stop be opposite a fire station where there's an egress. And originally I had planned to have, I was hoping we could have the bus stop, the shelter, excuse me, well, the bus stop with the shelter be here where there's some extra room, but that's not going to work for 2 reasons. 1, the fire station, and 2, Metro Transit is saying that they need about 500 feet of distance to make for buses to make this left turn. So when they're in the eastbound lane, when they're in the curb lane heading east and they're stopped here, they need time to be able to merge left and then get into the left turn lane to turn left onto Parmenter Street. So Metro Transit is wanting to put the stop on this side of Cayuga or possibly on this side, but they don't want it to be that far east. We're currently having a big debate with them about whether, anyway, I won't go into all the details. The point is the bus stop will be at one of these locations, but it's not going to be exactly where I previously said. That's what I want to convey to you. What I'd like to do is, and there's going to be art on the side of these shelters. So we'd like to, Abby and I would like to put it here, replace this sign with, it's, you know, there's probably, well, that is private property. So we want to put the shelter there and have it be a very attractive artistic shelter for the downtown. So we're working on that. I don't have a resolution for you right now. I just want to bring it to your attention.
Okay, thank you.
Oops.
All right, the last item on our agenda, Mark, is that you're gonna give us an update on the North Mendota Trail project
Yep.
schedule.
Everyone's favorite project that is going as smoothly as any project we've ever had in the city.
Oh my. God.
So we, the contractor Badgerland did not get as much work done last fall as we had expected. And they only did, they only started the work over by, well, I might as well go to the drawing or the map. Let's see here. All right. They only did the part in front of the Arbor Lakes Apartments. This sidewalk was removed and unfortunately not replaced, as they probably have updated you previously. So that is, you know, where they'll start again this coming spring. They also still have to put in retaining wall along in front of Dollar General and Valley Ridge. And I think there's also a part in front of the condos here. So we have said to them emphatically that we do not want to see them rip out the sidewalk that's here today. We don't want to see them remove that and have it sit open, you know, unpaved for months. I mean, that's just not acceptable. So I asked them for a schedule that conveys, that's to illustrate what their timing is for completing the project. And sidewalk removal is still shown terribly early, April. Well, I shouldn't say terribly early. Nothing is early with this project, but they're showing it, you know, in early April. But then they wouldn't do paving until, let's see, surface curb and gutter, install concrete sidewalk.
May.
Curb and gutter. Oh, asphalt paving, here it is, in May. So that still is basically a 6-week window, which I still consider entirely unacceptable. So that is something I'm, with your feedback, and going to reiterate to them that we need to keep that sidewalk concrete in place as long as possible. I'd like to keep it to 2 or 3 weeks between sidewalk removal and asphalt paving, but we don't have as much leverage as you might think, because it wasn't part of the terms of the contract. If you add terms to the contract like that, it makes bidding, it gets you higher bid results. And for those of you who weren't on the committee, we had trouble getting bids the first time. So we are at some mercy of the private sector here with timing. But this is the schedule. The idea is to have this done by early June and be done with this project once and for all.
So I'm not gonna get into this too much, but they're not gonna start then until April 3rd? They're not gonna start up till April 3rd?
Well, that's what they're indicating, and I suspect it's because of, I mean, I would think they could start earlier with retaining wall work if the thaw, you know, if it thaws. Usually the thaw is pretty well underway in March, but what they're showing here is early April, right?
Okay. Well, you know my opinion.
Get it done yesterday. So.
Anybody have any questions or comments on this proposed schedule? If not, this was basically just for the committee's knowledge.
Yeah.
All right, that then takes us to the end of our meeting, and if there is nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we do, I want to bring up the walks thing that I suggested at the prior, because I was not intending to schedule those when the weather was nice. Those of us who walk to places, there are several people here along Century who walk to work all year long. And I think it's very important that the committee schedule one of these as soon as possible. If we got lucky, it would have just snowed and we would have to trudge over the ice and through the slush.
Okay, Mark, would you put that on our February agenda for us, please, so that in our meeting in February, then we can schedule, it'll still be during winter time then when we can.
Yes,
So
we'll
let's put that
all
on
be
our,
miserable together.
there you go. Let's put that on our agenda for our next meeting, Mark.
That will be on February 9th.
Very good. Plenty of opportunity to make us miserable, Tad.
Yeah,
Okay, with that, can I have?
I'm starting to understand how Tad thinks.
not too miserable. There'll probably be like Prairie Cafe or Geno's or something involved, and you
that
can't
we
be
can
miserable
duck
eating
into
there.
to
Yeah.
replenish ourselves. There you go. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I will move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
I.
Opposed? We are adjourned. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good evening.
Good night.
Good night.